Ernie, I am looking up at the screen. One of my favorite ladies, Melanie. I
Yes.
had a chance to meet her in New Jersey, and there's nothing pretentious about her. She is just so down to earth. And I'm looking at Melanie Carnegie Hall and
Yeah.
Gather Me. So you
Yeah.
obviously had something to do with a lot of
And,
that.
yeah, and Madrigada too. I mean,
Ooh.
with her, it was very strange because I only met her once. I mainly dealt with her husband, Peter Shakirek, who
Mhm.
was also her manager, and he was also a huge fan of the guy that we were working for. My partner Tony was head of sales. I was creative director, and we were working for a guy in New York who was friends with Peter. And and we got to know Peter when we did Gather Me in 1971. We got a chance to. I was in the art department upstairs. I had been working on the Rolling Stones tongue, and a lot of the marketing that we did. As you know, the tongue that I did was used on all the merchandise, including the shirts that the Stones wore on that 1972 tour. So, but we had met Peter, and Peter used to love to party, and he would come over to the office, and he would come upstairs to the art department because it was a three-story brownstone between 53rd on 53rd between Madison and Park, yeah, uptown, and it was a little carriage house. And on the bottom floor was a souvlaki place. And every day they would start making the souvlaki, and the smell would come up into the top where we were in this carriage house. We were on the top floor, and it had shutters that you could open up like this and look out into the street there. And the smell was just incredible. And Peter used to love to come up there and hang out. And we did the Gather Me album, and I did an in-store piece for her, a little standee that went in on the counter and stuff. And he was really a really nice guy. And we had, and so in 1970, at the beginning of 1972, Tony, the vice president and head of sales, and I, the creative director, left that company and started Pacific Ioneer. And a lot of times, sometimes clients will come with you. Sometimes their loyalty is more to the people that own the company or to the company itself or whatever. But in my industry, it's always happening a lot. People that get into a creative situation at an agency will befriend clients. And the client, when they leave the agency, the clients will come with them, and that was like a really thing that happened a lot. And we talked about the Jesus Christ Superstar and how the guys that were the art directors at that company at Levitt left, started their own company. They were taking Decca with them. That was not unusual. That's not unusual in the advertising business. And, it's funny because a lot of it has to do with price, and then there's politics. And Peter was the guy that we worked for, was the kind of guy that was your friend until there was nothing else you could do for him. And then he once drew a diagram for me like a bullseye. Okay. And it emulated out. And, he explained to me how in these rings, he was the middle one. And in the rings going out were the places that he would put relationships and people into. So it was very weird. I mean, he was a very strange guy. And so some clients would have a lot to offer, so they were in the inner circle. Clients that were in a ring or two outside didn't really matter that much if they came or went. And I guess to him, when we left, and Peter really, really loved what we did for Gather Me, and he loved the work that, he knew that I was doing the Rolling Stones tongue. I mean, he was up there when I was doing this stuff. He'd come and hang out a lot, and so, we kind of made friends. And then when we left the company and started Pacific Ioneer, well, we figured, that he'll stay with, the guy that owned the company we were with. And sure enough, in 1973, he gives us a call, and Melanie's in the studio, and they're not recording as much as they're editing this double album that they're going to do called Live at Carnegie Hall. And I too was a huge fan of hers, and it's funny because you mentioned she was at that same time when Peter, Paul and Mary, Barbara, what's her name from Joan Baez, Judy Collins, those kinds of artists were really big in the hippie movement and love and peace. And Melanie was really right in there with it. I mean, she really, because before she had Brand New Key as a big hit, there were a lot of stuff that she had done before that. And even though I think that was probably one of her biggest hits, but so they called us in to do the live at Carnegie Hall, and I did this, as you can see back here. I did this beautiful logo, and Carl Ramsey, the airbrush artist at Pacific Pioneer, did a tortoise shell, this beautiful tortoise shell effect in the lettering. Okay, and then we put it on this really like a Naples yellow background with white linen kind of around it. I mean, it was just so much her. And I still have the artwork. I have the actual artwork of that. The tortoise, what happened was the record company, who really, we never got a Christmas card from the record company, okay? We were really not on their favored list. Anyway, their art department took it over. And they screwed it all up, man. They didn't go out on a press check. They just made it look like caca. And it really hurt, and Peter wasn't happy. I mean, but it was right along one of those things where, well, why would you go there? We'll just take it. You don't need the guy that we work for who was buying the printing from the printer and selling it to the record company. We can handle it. We can do it. We have an art department. They can do it. And I tell you, somebody asked me the other day, what was that one of the albums that you loved the most and ended up terrible, and this one was one of them. A beautiful album musically, but they just didn't understand what was going on with what we had created, and then after that, in 1974. Again, we thought, okay, well, this is going to be our undoing here, because, it's like now it becomes he said, she said, and, we didn't know, we should have. Every album that we did that we could go to a press check, we would. I mean, I would go at a press check at 2:00 in the morning, and I really preferred those over the ones that were like 4:00 in the afternoon, and you have to fight traffic for 2 hours to get to where the printer was, usually downtown our city of industry in LA. And we're over on the other side of town, and it's 4:00 and everybody's going home, and it's like crazy. And the printers would do that on purpose, because they didn't want us there. They didn't want us to go, well, wait a minute, this doesn't look quite right. We got to change this color. And they're not interested in quality. They're interested in quantity. Okay. Got 10,000 of these, we got 100,000 job behind that. And that's the mentality. And the mentality of, and I don't want to say all of them, but a lot of the competition that we had didn't pay any attention to the production end of it. Okay. And the production end of it is the most important part.
Yeah.
It's like anything else. You could do a great, song, you can record it beautiful, but in the production of it and the final finessing of it, if that screws up, everything is lost. And this album, unfortunately, was like that. There was a beautiful rendering of a rose there. I mean, Carl Ramsey did a beautiful job. He's an amazing airbrush artist who passed away a few years ago. But, anyway, we had thought that, okay, that was going to be the undoing, because Peter wasn't happy. We weren't happy. The record company's blaming us, and then, when it comes out that, hey, well, you could have gone to the press check and it made it a lot better. Did anybody go out to the press check? No. Did we have the ability to? No. So, it gets, it got pretty
crazy.
Messed up. Yeah, it did. It really did. And so we had thought, well, okay, well, that was going to be the end of that for Melanie and Peter and stuff. And sure enough, in 1974, Peter called Tony, my partner, and he said, okay, we've got this double album that we're doing for Melanie. It's called Madrigada. And she got on the phone and she started talking about it and what it meant to her. And so we created this incredible package for her and did a lot of posters and in-store stuff. And it was really great. And then, like life does, people just go separate ways. She used the logo that I did on other stuff. And you can see that's the Japanese version down there. And then, we have the Madrigada above here, above my head. and then the Gather Me over there. And like a lot of other artists we talked about in the past, Ruby, Mary Travers. There is a lot of artists that I would have loved, the Rolling Stones, artists that I would have loved to have done more than one thing to. I feel very lucky that I was able to do 3 things for her and Peter. And then about a year and a half ago, just as the pandemic was picking up, I got reached out to by her, I guess her assistant, her executive assistant, and was wanting to know, what artwork that I had and stuff that they could get because they're doing a documentary on her. So I said, yeah, I've got all these different pieces, not a whole lot, but whatever I have, you're more than welcome to use. And then we talked she was going to talk to Melanie. And then I found out through her that Peter had passed away.
Yeah, that was so sad.
I'll tell you, you know what? He was a great guy. He really was. He was like Shep Gordon. He was like, just some of these guys that were they were real people too. They had emotions. They weren't just about the business, Lauren Schiffer, Burton Cummings manager, same way. There's a lot of them. And then there's these ones that are kind of hustlers.
I've heard about them.
Oh, yeah. If it ain't the record company, it's the manager. You got to watch out for all of them. I think I told you, one of the things that, because Lauren and Burton have been friends forever. And, we were talking one time and Lauren said, I forget what started the conversation, but he said, well, I don't, we were talking about how artists would get screwed by the record companies or by the management and stuff. And that happened. That was rampant because the musicians just care about the music. They don't have to worry about the money. I don't worry about the money. My wife does. I never get involved, as little as possible. And Lauren said, Burton and I don't have that problem, of who, and when managers, the artist wants to know where the money went and, you got every nickel and Burton is like that. He's very meticulous and he wants to know, rightfully so. And he was smart enough to look around and see that a lot of his, fellow artists were getting hosed good, and so he said, Burton and I never had that problem. I said, how's that? He goes, because Burton gets paid and then he pays me. Which I thought, well, that's really cool.
Yeah,
why did anybody ever think of that before?
It's very smart. Well, Bernie, you were mentioning Peter Sakarik. I was blessed I had a chance to meet him because when Melanie was in New Jersey, Peter was there, just a nice guy because we were in line, ready to meet her. And he was going through and talking to everybody. And I told him, I said, Peter, I do a public radio show. I love Melanie. And he gave me one of her cards and I have kept it because not long after I met Peter and Melanie, Peter passed away. It may have been within like 4 days to a week. And I consider that just a real blessing because he was just so wonderful. And he cared a lot about her.
And it was real. That wasn't
real.
Phony. It wasn't phony. I mean, from the first time I met him, before I even knew that we were going to do anything for Melanie, I mean, I knew that he managed Melanie because we had, I did Gather Me and I met him after we did, we put the album. I mean, it's a very simple album. They gave me a picture. It's like Link Ray. You get a picture or two and that's it. I mean, so you got to make something out of that. That's why when people ask me, what was your favorite artist that you ever worked with? And it's like by far Alice Cooper, because there's so much content, so much to create with,
Sure.
if, as an artist, if I give you a paintbrush and one color, then there's pretty much limited to what you could do as far as color and theme and stuff. If I gave you a full range palette and said, here, go crazy, that was Alice Cooper. That was the difference between.
It sounds like him. It sounds like him. I say that affectionately.
It was so fun. I mean, we just had a ball. I mean, and that's what, and Peter was like that. He was a real person and he was some people you meet and you like the guy we work for. When I first met him, I thought I wanted to be just like him. He looked like a rock star. He was like, he had the moves and he had, and he was slick and he had the carriage house in Upper Manhattan.
Gotta watch that packaging.
Had the French girlfriend, Lulu.
Oh.
She was great. And you know what? when this is something that I've never said to anybody, but we can say it here because we're all neighbors. The girl, the guy we worked for was notorious for having a lot of relationships with women at the same time. In fact, when we came to LA, had to open up the office, he had a party for us. And there were a lot of celebrities there. You know, Norman Seeff was there, Peter Lawford was there. There were a lot of people and just sort of welcoming us there. And he had 3 girlfriends there at the same event. And we were all sitting back just taking bets on how long it would take before they collided. He was slick, got through all of them, no problem whatsoever, you know, and just, but then when you realize the kind of person that is, you know, it's not something that you look up to. It's not something that you want to be like. And Bonnie spotted it right away. I mean, you know, he had us to, when we first went to work for him, he had us to dinner at his upper Manhattan carriage house. And, you know, with the French girlfriend. And what I was going to say was it was great because he had this reputation. And Lulu was one of them, Lucette. And she was from France, and he was, you know, he had the French girlfriend, and he had the Porsche, and, you know, they had the whole thing, everything you wanted to be. And she really wasn't one that would put up with a lot, and he was notorious for that. And so she ended up out in one of the outer rings on the circle of people, and but we had become good friends. She was great friends with Tony and I, and when we came out to LA, she came out as well. And she was very, very instrumental in opening our eyes to what was going on because she had gone through it and we witnessed it. And so now it's coming from the horse's mouth. And she was very, very instrumental in helping us make the transition from him to Pacific Ioneer in 1972.
There's signs along the way, and that was a blessing in disguise, Ernie.
That
was definitely a blessing in disguise.
And there was another one that was a support. I'm not going to mention any names, but it was support, financial support for Pacific Ioneer for our first year from someone who absolutely hated the person we worked for. And with that financial support, it was another little blessing along the way to say, hey, you know, we each had $2,500. You can't really start a company on $5,000, but we did, and we got the support, but we worked for it. It wasn't just handed to us, but it was guaranteed. So there were all these signs that what we needed to do, because our whole thing was, you don't have to treat people like that. No. You don't have to, you know, be friends. That's really what it is. Every client that I have, I'm probably pretty much, if they're still alive, I'm still friends with them. You know, and that's why when I would go from one company to another, you know, whether it was Pacific Ioneer to the next company to whatever, the clients always followed me because we were friends too. And they valued what I did for them because they were special to me. You could talk to my biggest client or you could talk to my smallest client. And that smallest client would swear to you that they were the only client I had. Okay. And that's really what my partner and I, that's what Pacific Ioneer was all about. We made friendships. And in return, we reciprocated by giving them the best that we could possibly give. And we did. I mean, it was working in that art department was a real education for all of us. When I was talking about this the other day, when all of us came together, it was such a weird group of people, but isn't it always? It's like the Beatles, 3 guitars and a drum. I mean, how do you change the world? How do you change it? They did it. Pacific Ioneer did that. I mean, we didn't change the world. We made it better, okay? It's like that's what we wanted to do. And along the way, we made a lot of great friendships. And we're going to be talking about more and more of these because everyone that we've talked about, Joyce, was a friend. Every group, no matter how big or small, and sometimes those people would go off and form another group and bring us in, you know, that's the great part of it. That is really the great part of it.
Ernie, you know my next question. Well, I'm going to tell you a little quick story because we're getting into the thing
Okay.
about music.
Okay.
Melanie is always so open with her audience, and she was telling us, what would you all like to hear? Peter
Yeah.
came in and says, "Why don't you play that?" She goes, "Peter, I'm not asking you. I'm asking them." And it was just so funny to watch those two together. They
Yeah.
were entertainment. So I'm asking you, what Melanie song would you like me to play?
Well, Burton would bust me for picking low-hanging fruit, but
Oh, it's all right.
Brand New Key is obviously one of her most memorable songs. I
Yeah.
mean, they'll remember the song before they remember who did it. And it's one of those kind of, it's like, 18 or School's Out. It's always going to be relevant. For me, off the Madrigada album, Will You Love Me Tomorrow, is, I think, an incredible song. So I would pick Will You Love Me Tomorrow or Brand New Key, either one of those.
Good ones. They are excellent ones.
Which ones would you pick?
Oh, a Brand New Key would be there because a lot of people, when Melanie was with us, were asking for it. Now, I told her I love Beautiful People because that was really my introduction to her. So Beautiful People, and I love her recording of Ruby Tuesday.
Yeah. Another one. I mean, I was amazed at how many albums she's had. I mean, you sort of do work for the person, and then you kind of, life goes on and you sort of lose track and you're busy doing other stuff. And I never realized how many albums that she had and how, I knew what an influence Peter was because I got a chance to really know him. I didn't really get a chance to know her, but I knew him. And I knew that if she was anything other than what she seemed to be, Peter wouldn't have been with her or wouldn't have had that. He was that kind of guy.